I'm going to ask Reverend Marvin Harada to lead us in opening gasho. So yes, you could spotlight Sensei also. Sensei, let's begin with opening gasho.
Okay, Gasho, please. Naman Davutz, Naman
Namam
Davutz, Naman
dams, namam
Davutz, Naman
dams,
Davutz, Naman Davutz,
namam
Naman
dams,
Davutz. Done.
namam dams.
Cute.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me and Glenn Inanaga on this session. It's been a lot of brain trust went into putting this session together, and I we hope that it's going to be something that is both provocative, but also one that you can begin to understand the trajectory on which I've been building for the last 2 years and what Glenn will take on in his administration as he takes on the position of BCA president moving forward. The initial description that we put into the session description was really around let's talk about membership. And yes, that's we're still going to do that, but we're putting it in a different context. And so we've re titled the session to be Growth and Connection, Aligning BCA and Local Temples Towards Our Future. So with that, should we move to the next slide?
Yep. Let me just.
Is it me or is it you, Glenn?
I think this one is you.
Okay, so today we're going to do a little bit of introductions. We're going to talk about what the objectives for today's session's about and what we see for our tomorrow future. We're going to talk a little bit about the BC in 2026, both our foundation and where we see our crossroads are in order to take us into the future. We're going to talk. Another point is really to create a discussion around value add, and it's through a partnership and alignment between BCA and all of our member temples and churches. We're going to introduce a new initiative. This is like right from it's actually really been something that has just come up, but it's been the foundation for this idea has been part of the work that I've been doing for the last 2 years. We're calling it Project Catalyst, and we'll talk much more about what this means for the future of BCA's move forward. And then we're going to go into discussion and recap.
Okay.
So I just wanted to take a little bit of time and introduce give Glenn and I a little bit of time to talk a little bit about ourselves so that you can get a deeper understanding of who we are and what we've been up to and what we intend to bring to the BCA going forward. So as you know, I'm actually now 7 days away from handing my gavel to Mr. Glenn Inanaga. And I'm really looking forward to his new administration and the execution that he's going to bring to many of the things that I've been putting the foundations for in the last 2 years. As you know, in my Wheel of Dharma articles, I've been consistently bringing up the topic of who is a member, and it's so important because Reverend Marvin Harada's one of his initiatives has been to increase membership across the BCA. But I believe, we struggled with this issue of increasing membership, and I think some of it goes back to the initial our premise on how we define a member. And we've had this discussion across many national board meetings and across many other national meetings. And there is a definite bias that says you can be a member if you pay X number of dollars to be that meets the benchmark what we've set at each of our temples and churches. And so that as a beginning definition of who is a member is one that we're going to call into question. I'm as in professionally, I'm an executive leadership coach. I have been working in this area of working with C-level executives, vice presidents, and directors in both corporate and nonprofit entities. My sweet spot are really helping individuals understand why they can't seem to move things forward. And it all comes down to a better understanding of behaviors, of what drives who, what drives what, why, and we do the things we do and the way we do it. Because if we can't understand why we do the things we do and the way we do, we're not going to be able to change that pattern. So we can't more effectively communicate. We can't more effectively be socially and personally aware of who we are, and in general raise the level of emotional intelligence that all leaders need to have greater proficiency in, to be just more empathetic in how they deal with critical and crucial issues that happen as part of leadership in any organization. I'm a member of the Buddhist Church of Oakland. In fact, as I'm stepping down from the presidency of the Buddhist Churches of America, I've been uh, coerced. Well, that's a hard word. I've been asked.
Voluntold.
I've been voluntold to take on the role of president of the Buddhist Church of Oakland again. So, and I will be installed tomorrow in our annual general meeting. And so I will have a week of overlap where I will be both president of the BCA and president of the Buddhist Church of Oakland. But I'm really looking forward to both my new executive committee at the Buddhist Church of Oakland, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Glenn and the executive committee of the BCA take what I've been working on for the last 2 years and really execute and bring so much of what we've been talking about, working on, and actually bringing it to fruition. So I turn it over to Glenn to talk a little bit about what he's up to.
Oh, thanks, Steve. So good morning, everyone. My name is Glenn Inanaga. I have the privilege of being the BCA president-elect for, I guess, the next 7 days remaining. And I do look forward to working with all of you over the next 2 years of my term as well. We will talk more during later parts of either the workshop or the National Council meeting around things that I'm excited about over the next 2 years. But let me just stop for a minute today to say that I really appreciate where we come from, which is that I obviously have sat on the executive committee at the BCA for quite a long time. And this is really what you're seeing now is really the continuation of the trend that we've had with Dr. Kent, Terry, Steve, and myself. And so I think of it as really just a chapter in a longer story of where we're going for the BCA. And of course, I look forward to working with each of you, meeting each of you, and learning more about each of your different temples and what your objectives are as we go through this too. So I won't belabor the point anymore. We can talk more about it, but I'd love to keep our presentation on track because I know we have a short period of time and we're going to cover a lot today, actually.
We're going to cover a lot. What we want to do is launch a poll, a simple poll. I think it's 4 questions. And Alex just launched the poll. Please take the opportunity to answer. Many of them are multiple choice, so answer however many pertain to you. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Select
I think
all
it's
the
on the screen, so maybe people could go ahead and start filling it out.
Yes. What we want to do is really understand the geographic diversity of where people are coming from. We want to understand kind of the roles that you play in your temples and churches so that we can better understand how to structure some of the discussion we're having today. I like my third question, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being most engaged. What's your level of engagement with your local temple and church? We want to see lots of 5s here, but but be honest. I don't see any results happening.
Oh no,
I
they're
only
coming
see
through now.
7% participation at this point.
Yeah, they're coming through now.
Oh, now that's coming in. So we have 54 participants. We have 54 individuals in attendance. And I'm seeing, oh, now it's coming through.
Yeah, while we're waiting, Steve, I guess maybe we can kind of fill in the time with a few things. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what we're looking forward to over the next 2 years. We'll talk a little bit about the snapshot for today. But I also wanted to maybe share a personal thought too, which is that I actually am really excited to be visiting a bunch of different districts during my term as president-elect and also moving forward too. And one of the common threads that I've been sharing with folks is just this idea of how exciting it is to be a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist. I'm sure many of you feel this way too. In what I would describe to be a very challenging environment with a lot of change and a lot of disruption, I find a lot of solace and comfort in the Nembutsu and Jodo Shinshu. So hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that, or you'll hear more about that in later sessions today too. So I think we're at 88.
We're at 88% participation at this point. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes. A couple of us that are kind of co-hosts or hosts can't. And I know Alex can't either fill in the thing, but so we're never going to get to full 100%. So we're at 90%. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. So we're at 92%. And I'm going to end the poll and we'll take a look at the results. Can people see the results or not?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have lots of folks. Northwest District, Northern California District, Southern District are the big players here. Thank you for those that are coming in from Hawaii and from the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples of Canada. So we have a nice diverse group here. We see some folks from Eastern District too. So thank you for joining. I know it's later in the morning for all of you. It's lunchtime for you. What roles describe your affiliation and attendance today? Many of you are temple or church board members. You are also temple church committee members. We see a fair representation among the affiliated organizations. I also see some folks who are definitely in leadership positions in community groups and other in your professional lives or in your academic institutions. So thank you for sharing that. On a scale of 1 to 5, engage with your local temple and church. It's great to see all of you are engaged. Many of you are engaged, very engaged in your local temple and church. And with the BCA or your Kyodan, it's on an average, it's generally, maybe 1 in 5 of you are definitely involved. Well, more of 40% are involved with the Kyodan at the larger scale, and other folks are generally engaged. I see 3 to 5. Those that answered 3 to 5, so that's 16. That's 34 of the 54 of us. 32. That's almost 70% are definitely on the engaged side with your larger national or legislative bodies. So just wanted to share that with you to see who else is in the audience here this morning, just to give you a flavor of the kind of things that we're going to talk about, so we can adjust the discussion and give us as presenters some sense of how we can structure the conversation, but for you to also understand who else is out in the gallery, so you can potentially ask the questions and provide the comments that you might want to do to engage those people that are sharing in this presentation from around the country. Let's go to the next slide.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and cover today's objectives now that we've had a chance to engage with you and make sure you're awake for the Saturday morning presentation. So here are today's objectives. One, obviously, we're going to honor the 127-year legacy of the BCA. All of us are here as a result of the work that was done by our pioneers. Steve and I are going to highlight a little bit of the state of the BCA in 2026. I'm also going to provide an update on our membership numbers from prior. I actually did go into this in more detail during the National Council meeting in Sacramento, and it was suggested that we actually see which way the trend has gone since then. I'll also present a crossroads question for this leadership group about where we would like to go in the future. Next, we'll also focus on the alignment and partnership that we have between the BCA and the temple. And no, that's not an error. We left the blank there. There's going to be we'll call it an engagement opportunity for everybody to fill in the blank, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm also pleased that we're going to share a new BCA values or benefits webpage highlighting our programs and initiatives, which I believe offer our local temples value and partnership in that. So we'll premiere that today. We'll also spend a little bit of time talking about tomorrow's future, as we call it. Steve alluded to this a little bit earlier too, the idea that we're introducing a new pilot project for consideration. Sorry, and that is Project Catalyst. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but we'll provide a summary, pros and cons, and a timeline for folks today. It basically is an effort that I think will be transformative for the BCA and certainly affects our financial model, I think, to the benefit of local temples. It also should inspire a creative approach, hopefully, to membership and growth for everyone. And then finally, we think this session should really kick off the rest of the day for all of us to be able to listen and hopefully have the right mindset. One thing I'd love to introduce to a preview is this idea of a theme we are throwing around within executive committee and with Bishop Harada, which is the idea that our focus moving forward should be about growth and connection. It's so important for the BCA as well as our local temples. So the questions that I am hoping we will provoke with all of us this morning as you listen to today's session or this session, as well as all of the different sessions that you'll be hearing in the afternoon, is what can I take back with me to my board or my temple? How can I prepare us for the change and growth that is yet to come? And last but not least, how do I increase the connections that we have both at the local and the national level? So with that, we'll move into what I call the snapshot for BCA. So obviously in 2024, we celebrated our 125th anniversary, excuse me. And in 2025, people say different things during presentations, which I don't know everybody would agree with, but I'm pretty sure everyone's going to agree with this one, which is that 2025 has been an unprecedented year of disruption and change, starting with course with the change in administration and a lot of the different things that were happening in the economy. And I'm sure that even the aftermath of COVID is still something that affects some of our local temples as well. But within that disruption and change, one of the things we've noted is that some things remain the same for good or bad. So as I said, this is the update from our National Council meeting in 2020, excuse me. In 2019, the census or membership level for the BCA on an absolute basis was 11,822. And I know this graph might be a little hard to see. Hopefully you can see it. In 23, since Sacramento, we have had additional data. And that number obviously has continued to go down to 10,146. Against the baseline of 2019, that is a 14% decrease, or roughly a 3.54% year-over-year decline. The numbers in 24 continued to prove this theory out. We were at 9,957, which is a 16% decrease against the baseline and a 3.16% decrease on a year-over-year basis. And last but not least, we were able to collect the data for 2025 in time for today as well. And you'll hear more about this at the National Council meeting in Renton, as well as in other presentations today. We are now at 9,457, which is around 20% decrease against the baseline from 2019. And with a year-over-year rate, which is pretty consistent over the last three with this new data. So again, just statistically, you're looking at this conceptually, at this rate, we have about 30 years left within this organization for us based on this trend. Or as Google Gemini tells me, it's roughly one generation of us to move forward. So I think this is important, not the greatest news, I get it, but I think important for us to share because it's the, if you will, the foundation and again, the crossroad that we're coming up against as a leadership team. I also do have some good news though. So of the 58 temples in the BCA, we're comparing a data set from Sacramento and I'll say now Renton. what we've seen is in Sacramento, we had 10 temples that had increased their count over the previous baseline. And I'm pleased to report that in this new data set, there are 17 temples that are actually increasing their count out of the 58. So that's a 29%. That's 29% of our temples. And said in Sacramento, that number has gone up about 7. And then on the decrease, the number of temples that were decreasing over the data set in Sacramento was 47. And so I'm pleased to report that in the data set today, there are only 39 temples that are decreasing count. So on whole, we are improving. But unfortunately, I'm not sure if this is enough change. And so this is one of those questions that comes back to us as well. I should also note here that in the new data set, there are now 3 more temples that are now reporting less than 100 members, and the number of temples reporting less than 50 members has stayed the same. So in the light of growth and connection and this hope of being able to transform and change this trajectory, I think the question for all of us, not just at the national level, but at each of our temples, is how do we turn these numbers? How do we create a system or an opportunity to grow and change? I'm going to turn it over to Steve to share a little bit more about some of the data that we've been looking at.
When we started to look more carefully at the data, I took the opportunity for the December 2025 National Board to begin to parse out kind of the differences among the temple sizes. So that's when Glenn starts to reference temples less than 100. We divided our 58 temples into 4 categories: temples less than 100 members, temples 100 to 200 members, temples 200 to 350 members, and temples 350 over. So those are the group A, group B, group C, group D. The interesting part about that is that group D, which is our largest temples over 350, hold 37% of our membership. If you take the temples that are 200 and over, that's group C and group D, representing about a quarter of our 58 temples and churches. They hold 60% of our membership. 60% of our membership. It's an interesting statistic when you start to think about where are our members. The flip side of that is that almost half of our temples and churches, 48%, have only 17% of our members. They're the small rural temples. They're the ones that are still struggling to keep their doors open. They're the ones that are at most risk for and have the hardest time to think about increasing members because they don't have the population around them. Even if they extend beyond our Japanese American centric kind of communities, they still don't have the population densities that can allow them to make a huge dent in this increasing membership kind of approach to what will be for BCA kind of a sustainable future. Just some interesting statistics around that. I think that one of the things, and we'll talk a little bit about it later in the presentation, is and I've written about this many times in the Wheel of Dharma, is how do we define who's a member at our temple and church? And so we will get into that, but in all cases here, what is reported in the census that we're using as the data set are what the temples report as dues paying members. So if a temple sets an amount of dues and that a person makes a contribution to that temple, if it doesn't meet that level of membership dues benchmark, then they're not counted in these numbers.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to flip the discussion to not just dues paying members as part of our census, but to think about a different definition. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in later in the presentation. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Here we go.
So the recap is that we continue to decline at the same rate. this 3.3%, but it's when we think about the 3.3%, it's really on dues paying members that temples report to the BCA. And as Glenn said, if we continue to use that definition and we continue to experience that level of decline, 3% year on year, we only have 30 years left to exist. That's not going to happen, of course. So, but concentration is a risk, right? And as that last set of pie charts showed, the risk really is in the smaller rural temples. In the long-term future of what we're seeing is that the larger temples are going to get larger. They have the resources, they have the population base, they have that ability to attract even greater numbers. But it just means our larger temples are going to get larger while our smaller temples struggle just to keep the doors open. So in terms of this crossroads concept, we're really, without any strategic change or intervention, the reality is that, we're probably not going to disappear, but it's likely that we're just going to end up being half as large, but really with large temples. And we haven't even talked about the virtual context either. So we're just talking about brick and mortar temples and churches, right? And so if we choose strategic change, we have the chance to reverse the trend. So the question for everyone here is, how should we work together to choose change for all temples to be successful in the future?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Steve. Before I move to the next slide, I think I will stop and say that it is hard information. It is hard data to present. And I just want to make sure that we're being clear with everybody. One, this is where the bad news ends for this presentation. We're going to start talking about the positive and how we can make a difference. So I do want to reassure you of that. But I think, as we look at the next 2 years, as we look at the next, I'll just say the next 10 years, I think it's important that we really put this forefront and center to what we are all trying to do. And as a segue to the next set, I think my commitment to you is the BCA is absolutely committed to working with local temples to help reverse this trend. And I'm looking for your support and your commitment to help us do this as well, because this change, as I see it, happens at a variety of different levels, but really mostly at our local temples. And we'll talk a little bit more about the responsibility that we share next.
I just wanted to make a comment that if you have any questions or if you'd like to make any comments about what we're talking about, please use the chat to do so. We're very much interested in making sure that we use chat to make this as interactive as possible. So Alex is going to monitor chat and kind of if there are important issues that we see in the chat, we'll break and try to answer or respond to the comments. So yeah. Please use the chat to keep us.
It's a good segue, Steve, actually. So this is a part where I'm asking for engagement from everyone too. So I'd love to test the conventional wisdom with everybody today. So here's the phrase, again, it's not a mistake. The blank is there on purpose. BCA blank temples. What is the word or the thought that enters your mind as you see this phrase? Go ahead and put it in the chat. You can just one word, 2 words. How do we relate between the BCA and the temples?
What's that relationship?
What is that relationship?
1 or 2 word relationship that you'd like to characterize this relationship between BCA and the local temple church?
Yeah. Thank you, Laura Brave Soul. Go ahead and put it in.
Laura, thank you. Oh, Arturo, affiliate. All right. Guides, loves. I like Tom. I love. That's great.
Exactly. Just feel free to drop it into the chat. This is important for us to kind of see. It's our implicit poll, if you will, of how we do this.
Carl, I love it. Helps. That's a great relationship. Supports great. Karen. Warren, you can just put the Hompa Honganji Mission of Hawaii and the local temples in that same vein, Warren.
I have a feeling that both Warren and Laura probably have similar sort of issues or challenges as it relates to Hawaii and Canada as well. No one is being spared. I think this is all part of that discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going, but feel free to continue to put your words or thoughts into the chat as we move forward. I was going to suggest that a lot of the common responses I get is that it's BCA versus the temples. And again, please don't be offended by any of this. I'm certainly not. It's important to have a conversation. Another thought, it's BCA or the temples. And then, of course, I saw Laura put this in at the beginning. Thanks, Laura. I promised I didn't pay Laura. It's BCA and the temples. So let's talk about what that means when we use these words. Versus, in some sense, is really about what I think to be competition and scarcity. Where does my money go? I pay the BCA this assessment, and I'm not sure exactly where it goes. What is the value that BCA brings to me? The concept of war, prioritization and trade-offs. Who has time? Everyone's very, very busy. Who has time to really focus on the national agenda, or do people even who work on the national agenda have time to work on the local agenda? And of course, that's a lot of trade-offs that happen. And then last but not least, I think I'm trying to reach for something aspirational, something that I'm hoping you will see too, which is maybe it is the and. Maybe it is this concept that there's partnership and alignment between the BCA and our local temples. And really the phrase I would hope that we would have is, how do we solve this together? Because we are not by ourselves in any of that.
There were lots of great words that capture that end in the chat, Glenn.
Agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I do think, as Steve had said earlier, that there is a unique partnership between the BC and local temples with our different strengths. So we actually next tried to actually depict that. So the executive committee, in speaking with different representatives at our last leadership workshop, came up with this idea of a Venn diagram. Are you shocked that we're talking about a Venn diagram during a BCA presentation? So for those of you who remember, a Venn diagram symbolically shows the difference between perhaps what we are mutually working on in the middle and what what we would call the exclusive items might be in the different circles. Now, I would go as far as to say that this isn't always just mutually exclusive, but you see where we specialize at the national level in certain things and at the local level in certain things. And I'll just take a few examples if that's okay. One, clearly we are not doing Sunday and family services in San Francisco at headquarters or at the Jodo Shinshu Center. Maybe I stand corrected. We do services, but it's not the same kind of services or family services that are happening at Temple. This interface with families on a weekly basis is not something that we can do at the national level very easily. At the same time, we provide at the national level ministerial training and sourcing for our local temples. And this is not something that's very easy for a local temple to do. Leadership training, I referenced the leadership workshop. This is something that we try to do and offer for everybody because it's not easy for a temple to provide that for its own leaders. This is also very exciting to me too, this idea of new temples and sanghas. I'm not sure that a local temple has the wherewithal or the bandwidth or the time to really focus on developing new sanghas in Dallas, outside of Southern California. These are kinds of things that I think the national agenda allows more resources and flexibility to do. Endowment investing, Dharma school curriculum, temple guidelines, loans and grants. But I wanted to also focus on the things that a local temple does that I think are important. Funerals, weddings, memorials, festivals, Dharma school, youth activities, community events, cultural classes, senior care, sport. These are the one-to-one individual touches that we have with our members. This is the most, I would argue, relevant connection that people have sometimes with Jodo Shinshu Buddhism too.
I think a lot of that is community building.
Correct.
Our local temples and sanghas really, a lot of that focus is on community building within the local setting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important in the context of why people show up at a Jodo Shinshu temple, because
Agreed.
they feel like they're part of a great community that's very welcoming. And so that's a really important piece that the national agenda cannot actually provide. We can provide the setting to allow that to happen, but the actual implementation of that has to be at the local temple level.
Agree. And I think the most important part of the Venn diagram is the center. So this is definitely important to address. This concept that we both have a shared responsibility to members, to ministers, to our leaders, this group, for example. the development, fundraising, education, all of these things are what we consider to be shared responsibilities that happen too. Again, not mutually exclusive, but I think important to call out and say this is the value that we add as a local temple to the larger national system and what the national system affords for all of our local temples too. So we'll keep moving forward. So as part of that, I'm also very excited. This is a lot of exciting new things happening today. So I am very excited to announce a new program that the BCA is offering called BCA Benefits. This directly addresses the question that's often raised, which is what is the value that the BCA offers to me and a local temple? So this is a quick and easy way to see the value of the BCA to you. So I'm happy to share this with you. And there is a QR code that is live. And yes, you may grab your phone as long as, and scan this, as long as you promise me that you will not trade away from our presentation today. This QR code is live and active. So if you have your phone, feel free to point it, turn on the camera aspect of your phone, point it at the screen, and look at the QR code. And if you do, or when you do, there will be a link that shows up on your phone and feel free to click on it. You're adding value today for everybody. Your phone will take you to a page on the BCA website, and we'll show you a few screenshots today. I'm going to say this is not a live link. It's not available to the public yet. This is one of the benefits of being on our our workshop today. You get to see it live. So feel free to bookmark it. And this is exclusive for now. This is our worldwide premiere. I do want to acknowledge Michiko, Darlene, and the team at the BCA for putting this together so quickly. For those of you who don't have your phone readily available, I'll show you a few screenshots. Basically, this takes you to a page that summarizes the most important aspects of where the BCA is adding value to a local temple based on the Venn diagram. So you'll see the sections that are listed here. We'll talk about what the, Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in a nutshell. We'll show you CBE events. We'll talk about what's happening in the community. This is really cool too. We actually do provide Dharma. I think we call it Dial-a-Dharma, as Sensei often tells me. So in this, we have 5-minute messages in English, Japanese, and Spanish. On your phone, if you click on this button, it'll actually call this number, the 1-800 number that's listed on the screen, and you can listen to it. For those of you who don't know what a phone actually does in terms of dialing, 12 digits, the SoundCloud link offers you the ability to listen to these 5-minute Dharma podcasts in English, Japanese, and Spanish. This is so easy. All you have to do is bookmark it on your phone. You can always come back to it at any time. And we're going to ask you to share this with others too. So let's say you're sitting in traffic and you'd love to listen to the soothing voice of Bishop Parada in your traffic situation. You click on this link. Of course, you pay attention to the road, but you click on this link and you can listen to it as you go to work. Further down the screen, we also have links to some of our grants and funds available to temples, including the Otani Building Fund. Also, a link to the BCA endowment, so you can reach out and find out what the best possible investment opportunities are for your temple. And you can also promote your temple events on our website as well. Oops.
Oh.
I think someone's trying to annotate it. Okay. I know this is the best part of going live. So this is the recap. The BCA and the temples are a unique partnership. We span across the country national and local operations to spread the Dharma and to create communities in different areas. We play to our respective strengths, or I should say we should play to our respective strengths, this concept of the and in the middle of the Venn diagram. And in focus on our joint responsibilities, we're really focused on our members, ministers, leaders, development, and education. And of course, one of the action items or the call to action today is for you to share the BCA Benefits website that we're premiering today with your temple, with your board members. It's very easy to link it. And thanks, Alex, for putting the link in the chat as well. I'm also pleased to announce that the BCA staff will be providing a card that actually has this QR code, summarizes what's being offered, also has a QR code on the back to allow for donation. And this card will be available for the first time in Renton for attendees next week. So it'll be something easy for you to take, put in your wallet, or to share with other people as well. Okay. So moving forward, the next section is really about Project Catalyst. So Steve and I are very excited about this. We've been talking about this with the executive cabinet, the executive committee, as well as our national board too. This idea of decoupling our assessment from our membership. And I'll go into this in just a second. Project Catalyst is designed to meet the crossroads question and challenge and increase our membership growth. We choose the word catalyst based on this definition, which is that a catalyst is something that causes activity between two or more persons or forces without itself being affected. So we're not changing BCA in terms of the value that we add or the objectives of what we're trying to do. We're not changing local temples in terms of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, but we are going to change one fundamental thing that'll help accelerate the growth and change inside of BCA. So the proposal now, or the end in mind, is to change BCA membership dues and structure to maximize membership and long-term financial sustainability. And we're bringing membership to the forefront and being transparent about that with ourselves as a national organization, as well as each of our local temples. And again, this is a proposal that we're going to share. It's not something that we can vote on at Renton, but our hope, and Steve will go into the timeline, that we can spend a lot of time to talk about it, but we're introducing it today for this discussion. In short, the BCA proposes to hold assessments fixed for 5 years with only inflation or CPI adjustments to be made. And so temples will be allowed during this time to change their membership structures, your numbers, and still pay the same assessment that you've been paying before. And at the same time, we're asking all of our temples to share their membership information with the BCA so we can truly understand how many people are affiliated with all of our temples, to truly understand how much of a decline is really the decline and who the people are that are visiting our temples or part of the Jodo Shinshu or Nembutsu community in the United States. So some of the primary changes here, by holding our assessments constant, the temples can actually keep any additional membership income during the 5 years. So if you're able to if you're able to, let's say, find a new member to join your temple during this period based on whatever the customized membership program you have, and you charge them for a particular fee, that additional marginal revenue is for the temple to keep. It's not something that you have to share with the BCA. And so this additional membership income helps the temple for 5 years, and you can customize the way you collect it. In exchange, the BCA is going to invest in what we call contributed income. We're going to be focused on donations and rely on the ancillary sources and the diversification of our revenue streams that we've been working on. And of course, directly outreaching to everybody in this community that we're creating. At the end of year 5, we propose that we will reallocate the assessment based on our revised membership totals, and based on the monitoring, decide whether we want to continue this project or not. This is not a discussion that comes very lightly. There's actually some great risk to the BCA in order to do this too, but there has to be a transformative moment for us to really change the way we look at this. There should be a clearing, if you will, of any disincentive to increase the number of members across the system. I want to reassure you that we've been discussing this now for at least 12 months at the national level and at national board meetings. And when we look at the income types for the BCA, the categories that we see are: 1, assessed income. This has been the traditional model where we collect assessments from every temple across the country. We started to diversify to earned income. So we started focusing on endowment investment, our real estate investments, other things where we were able to earn money based on programming or events. And then last but not least, it's contributed income, which is relying on the philanthropy of our members and of the community as a whole. So in phase one, we moved from assessed to earned, or at least part of it we did, and we were very successful in that. And we've obviously shared this with all of you during previous national council meetings and national board meetings. And now we're moving to phase two, which is instead of relying just on assessments, to move towards philanthropy. And as you know, and you'll hear, the Dharma Forward campaign has been very successful. And I think proves that this idea of contributed income approaches are available and alive in our system. At the same time, I just want to caution that this project is still under discussion. We are trying to understand exactly what the impact it will be or the impact it will have on the national organization as well as for temples. So I don't want everybody to suddenly say we're not actually doing this yet. So, I mean, or that we should stop sending the assessment into San Francisco or Berkeley at this point. The key is we're having this discussion now and we're being open and transparent with everybody about it as well. So some of the pros that we've identified as part of the project, the BCA assessments being fixed can be planned and budgeted with greater certainty for temples. You'll know in advance exactly what the assessment will be over the next 5 years based on CPI adjustments. No more guessing based on how membership levels are fluctuating within the rest of the nation. There's no immediate risk if the BCA has a budget overrun. The BCA will have to be financially and fiscally responsible to find a way to get additional income, either from philanthropy or from our other operations.
Or manage those expenses.
Or manage the expenses down, exactly. We had a long conversation about that at the last national board meeting too. And there will be greater flexibility for a temple and control over membership structures to unleash your growth and focus. Steve mentioned this to me yesterday, and one of the big distinctions, and we'll have an exercise later about who is a member. How do you determine that? Well, in this case, we're going to give this control, if you will, or this responsibility back to temples to decide. To increase the growth in the community at a temple, how best would you want to structure your membership? And frankly, we're also aware that some temples were already doing this as well. So now we're just going to embrace it and give everybody a chance to consider what would be best for their community. The pros for the BCA is that we'll be able to forecast our revenue with greater certainty. We'll have less administrative hassle over census gathering. We hope to have direct contact and communication with our members across the country and anyone affiliated with Nembutsu teaching or Jodo Shinshu as a whole. It also allows us to reconcile and clean up all of our mailing lists and email lists that we have. We have countless mailing lists and email lists as well. So this way we can get to one unified source of truth around how to communicate with all of our members. And I think we're finally going to get a true picture of membership and affiliate counts. Some temples, as I understand it, were actually changing their structures and not reporting certain members too. So this allows us to have one unified matrix by which we can come back and plan, both at the national level and the local level. There are some cons. I'm sure we can talk more about that too. So there is going to be potentially increased administrative work at temples on creating and publicizing these new membership structures and new members as a whole. There are some risks in moving to new fee types and revenue. Some temples have done this already, but again, it's something for all temples to consider. And frankly, the BCA, at least in a world where we have a fixed assessment and we're transitioning our financial model, may not be able to move as quickly to help a local temple in an emergency. So we also have to kind of talk about the wherewithal for that. And then the cons for the BCA is we are going to lose this flexibility to increase revenue if there are, or through additional assessments annually, if there are emergencies or overages. We really do have to take this on at the national level. And I also have to share that there are risks in moving to fundraising or development and contributed income, especially in light of the fact that our membership numbers may be falling and in this particular market environment. So I think it's important to be transparent about that too. I'm going to turn this over to Steve to talk through the timeline, to talk through the next set of discussions around creative membership structure. But let me just go through the timeline. So for 2026, what we propose is a period of refinement and discussion for Project Catalyst. We plan to discuss this with everybody in great detail. You'll hear more about it later today as well, but at Renton for sure, and at the June National Board meeting. We're also going to come up with a proposal with specifics for introduction and approval at the December National Board meeting, and hopefully have something for your approval and voting at the National Council meeting in Orange County, 7th District. During this time, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to share with everybody what are the best practices for what temple membership structures might look like, and to see the true creativity that each of the temples would bring in time for Project Catalyst. And of course, in 2027, we will be looking at approval and as well as implementation. So we'll be monitoring these results and to see how Project Catalyst is working for everybody too, and to see if we can turn this number around. Again, a lot of information to share, but I'm hopeful that this is the kind of discussion that can really change the way we look at membership and how the BCA works in partnership with local temples. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to continue with the presentation and talk about membership structures.
Thanks, Glenn. Reminder, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We look forward to making sure that you're not sleeping behind your hidden camera, your camera that's not on. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to go and review how in our BCA bylaws we define who is a member. So in our bylaws under Article 4, one of the categories of membership is individual members. Next slide. And under that's in Article 5 on the national organization, it defines individual memberships as all members of any member temple are automatically members of BCA. So anybody that is considered a member at the local temple level is automatically a BCA member. The interesting part about our bylaws, it's silent on how a member temple or church determines who is a member. What has happened to date, however, is that all the member temples and churches have used the issue of dues as the criterion for which they would define a member of their temple church. So a temple church would set a benchmark dues for membership, and if an individual pays that, then they're considered a member of that temple, and therefore then become a member of the BCA. That, I think that's that very narrow definition of who's a member of the BCA is part of the problem about our inability to understand who is engaged at our temples, and a realistic understanding of who is part of our BCA Sangha. Next slide. So we have a little exercise. It's going to be a word cloud exercise. And so if you can click on these items, you can either do it on your phone by clicking on the QR code, or you can put in the URL there. You'll open into a Mentimeter window, which we encourage you to start to put in words of how your temple church defines a member. And I will share my screen so that people can see as you all populate that word cloud.
Yeah, so I stopped my share, Steve.
Okay, let me get to my Mentimeter. I thought I had it up. Oh, here it is. Someone who pays. Again, we're very narrow in our definition of who's a member. Pledge. Somebody who pays, paid, dues paying. Lots of definitions that involve a certain level of financial commitment or financial payment in order to become your members. $300. Annual fees.
Well, Steve, I think you might want to start the presentation so people can see it more clearly.
Okay, how do I do that?
I think it's the
Start presentation. I got it.
Yeah, let's see if
Got
that
it.
works.
There it is. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Ichikai member, put in the chat what you mean. I'm not familiar with that particular aspect of a member.
I think
As you can see, the larger the more the more one puts in a similar word, the larger it gets in the context of this word cloud. And so we're seeing the center word here is all based on dues. So it's quite enlightening that we're all in this mindset of what it means to be a member. I can't tell how many people have actually participated. So Ichikai is a sustaining membership. So dues paying, so that's at the same level of a regular member. That's Tyler, that's a question for you. How does that actually work?
Well, I think this is going to be the interesting conversation about best practice.
Yes. Yes. In Oakland, we have the ability, if you are a Kerokai member, you are a member. You can choose to um, offer your donation to be for the membership fee, but you're not necessarily required to.
But it's very clear, Steve, in this Mentimeter, the correlation is that people are looking at dues paying.
Yes, very much so.
Mhm.
The interesting part is there's a fair amount of people that say engaged. So if the people that put engaged into the Mentimeter here, can you clarify, does engagement have some connotation of donation or payment as part of that engaged um, um, criteria that you're putting into the Mentimeter?
Yeah. Steve, also there was a comment in the chat from Tom Austin Placer, and I can read it for those who don't have their chat available or open. It says a comment: if BCA plans to provide a recommendation at the national board meeting in December, oh, sorry, it's moving. Regarding information, it is recommended to include information regarding membership based on the freeze. I feel it will take some time for temples to define what their criteria for membership is. I'm glad you said that, Tom. That is the segue for this particular part of the discussion, which is we are going to have this conversation about what does it mean? What are the characteristics of being a member, quote unquote, and also to talk or share what other temples are doing as well. So hopefully this will not end up being something completely new for Placer, but maybe one where we can model off of something that we think is a best practice or what others are doing.
So interesting, the statement about the Yakima community. They're recognized um, for their contribution of time. So clarify for me whether that means that they're also included, those names are included on your census.
I do not know how we include people on our census, but I know that a couple of us pay dues for people we think should be recognized as members who can't necessarily afford it,
Oh, interesting.
or help them out to do like their whole family, if only an adult or two can afford it.
No.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. That's really important to understand. These are all the specific situations that as we think about changing the model, changing the criteria on how we encourage temples to think about this. This is that whole issue of a creative, innovative approach to who we include in our census, and therefore who we can identify as a member of our temple church.
So
The one thing that I have to say is that in our bylaws, there is a stipulation in the very beginning of the bylaw statement that any member really is adheres to the Jodo Shinshu practice. There's a small, and I don't get the words correct, but there's a preamble to all of it that has a certain level of implication that one is following the Nembutsu path.
So, Steve, in the chat, there's also this discussion about engagement for a temple is really more about engagement with Sangha and volunteering.
Volunteering, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So I
Yes.
think there's definitely that's part of the discussion we're having.
Yeah, and in the December National Board meeting, in the breakout rooms for the temples that were 200 to 350, there was a lot of discussion around volunteers and should they be put on census, on that temple census. And there was a lot of pushback saying, well, if we put them on our census, then they might not come back, because by putting them on the census, they become members, and therefore they think that they have additional obligations or financial kind of commitments to the temple, and also a statement of being a follower of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And therefore some of the community volunteers who show up at the temples to really help out would therefore be lost if in fact the approach from a local temple was to include everybody who was providing sweat equity was included on the census for the temple. These are the kinds of issues that need to be resolved at the local temple level. And these are great discussion points that need to work within the local community context of how temples and churches are incorporating sweat equity into the ability to make their church operations successful.
Steve, I think this is probably a good time to go to the next slide. I love this conversation that we're having.
All right, let me make sure I can save this.
Okay. Why don't we stop the share and I'll go back to the other slide if that's okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I'm going to stop that share and I'm going to try to figure out how to save this.
Yes, that sounds good.
Well, actually, I'm just going to print screen it.
Okay, that works too. I will say this much, which is I love this part of the discussion. This is exactly what I think we should be discussing at both the national level and the local level. And if this is causing feeling for you about concern or challenge, I would argue that is exactly what we are hoping for, to take something that is challenging and looks to be, we'll just say, very important. I think these are the types of things that we have to embrace in this discussion. So anyway, I think why don't we move to this next one? Steve, do you want to walk through the questions for consideration?
Yes. So as I said, I'm trying to change that definition of member from that. The word cloud definitely demonstrated that in many people's minds, to be a member, you have to pay. You have to meet some benchmark dues amount that a local temple is asking you to contribute to. So how do we change that dues paying aspect into what it means to be engaged at your local temple level? Again, this goes back to that whole issue of sweat equity. It goes back to also the ability, like Reverend May said at Yakima, for those people that can't afford to meet the benchmark of what would be dues, membership dues, how might you otherwise be creative about providing the financial support, but not require you to meet a certain benchmark for dues? And shouldn't they be based on their financial ability be included in your sangha and be fully vested in part of embracing everyone who shows up in your temples? These are the kinds of criteria that really we want to think about moving toward, and it has to happen at the local temple level. Like I said in that one case, in my 200 to 350 member temple discussion, that fear of the volunteers, if you automatically put them on a census, that they would not come back, right? It all has to be done within the context of the local community. So why are these engaged people not counted in your temple membership? And what would change under a new program or pilot program like Project Catalyst?
Steve, can I add something really quickly?
Yes.
So In fairness, I actually got a chat around this too, and I wanted to address this. I think the BCA has to take some accountability for this part of the discussion too, just to be clear for all of our temple leaders. This could sound controversial in one sense, but to be honest, this is what the BCA created. We created an environment where membership assessment was going to be the key. And so when you look at your members, you think, okay, can they pay? Can they not pay? How do we engage with people who don't pay? I think these are all important things based on the structure. So now that we're challenging that, the way that I think about it is how do you engage with the most amount of people? How do you create a community if you don't have to worry about whether they're paying or not paying? Maybe that's another way of describing it. How do you engage with other Nembutsu followers, even if they're not necessarily going to service every day, even if they're not technically coming every week? How would that change your strategy in terms of the outreach, the communication, and what sort of benefits you'd offer them too? I think that's part of the discussion we're also having as part of this.
Very much so. Very much so. These are really, really important discussions, and it requires that and in the relationship between BCA and the local temple church, right? It isn't something that BCA can define and direct. And it's not something that the local temple can completely respond in absence of its obligation as a member temple of the BCA too. So that partnership, that link that's an and is so important in this relationship of getting to the crux of how we address this issue of declining membership.
Mhm. So we have 9 minutes left in our presentation today, Steve. So maybe we can go through a couple of the chat comments, do the call to action, and give people a chance to maybe share sort of what their takeaway from our presentation today was.
Yeah, I would love to do that. So our call to action is in this issue to have all of us rethink membership and engagement and go beyond just dues paying as the criterion for determining who's a member. The second one is to explore a model where membership is flexible enough. It incentivizes counting engaged people. That whole new innovative creative redefinition needs to be something that happens at each of our local temples and churches. I've been writing about this since October of 2024. If you read my first article on who's a member in the Wheel of Dharma back in October of 2024, almost a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And so it's been part of the messaging that I've been trying to lay the foundation for all of us to be much more innovative about thinking about this, and not just accepting the idea that BCA dues is going to be the driver of who's our member. The interesting part is that it's critical to this new way of thinking about it is this whole program where we decouple, where we break the connection between the census count and is calculating the dues for each temple and church. I think that as the first element that needs to be actually agreed upon as a way to move forward, that is critical to this Project Catalyst. So that will be part of the discussions going forward. Obviously, as you saw in the pros and cons that Glenn put forth, there's risks on both sides, from the temple side and from the BCA side. But BCA is willing to take on those challenges. It makes BCA so much more financially prudent, fiscally responsible, and also therefore will allay any fears of what is my money doing if I'm going to give it to the BCA. So with that, I think we should go to some of the comments, Glenn. I think that would be great.
Yeah, that's great. I think, again, I wish we could have a more robust discussion, but at least this morning, but I'm committed to having this discussion with everybody as we continue moving forward. I still believe this is one of the most important topics that we can engage in as a community moving forward over the next 2 years too. So let's go through some of the comments. Gavin
I think
shared Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Gavin shared that we have people who can't afford membership, who are part of the temple, but are not technically referred to as a member. Just one comment I might have to that is, we talk about being inclusive and we create structures where certain peoples are members and not members. And I think this is an interesting discussion for us to have about how do we create inclusivity even if people are not able to pay, and how do we reach out to them in order to at least have some alignment or contribution at some point. This goes back to that, conversation around, does everything look like a membership fee? Who knows? Irene says we should have to define what a Nembutsu Jodo Shinshu follower is. Is it accepting a Buddhist name? Gavin also shared, I feel like we should reach out to people who are not technically members to see how they feel about not being an official member. And again, I think these are you're absolutely right, Gavin. I think these are the structures that we create for ourselves, and maybe we're just creating distinctions for folks.
I
Mike,
think one of the things,
oh, go ahead.
I think one of the things as we've been having this discussion is it an opt-in or an opt-out approach? And from the BCA perspective, our goal is to really think about it more as an opt-out, as part of kind of putting someone on a list that they have the option to opt out and not get on that list.
Yeah,
But
I
if
think
we,
the way,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I think the way that I described that is, I think part
It
of it
seems to me that each temple may have a slightly different definition of what a member is. And as long as that count at the temple level is transmitted to BCA, that's what we may end up with.
Yeah, I think that's true, Tom. I think this is part of that discussion about who is included in that count and what is the impact of that count? And just going back to Steve's point, I think the goal is to be as inclusive as possible and to be as open as possible, and maybe flexible is another word for it, in terms of how we would look at this. Mike commented, is there a minimum age to consider a person as a member? And I don't know that we have a clear view on that. I think we offer like youth memberships or student memberships in certain respects too. So I think there's an open conversation about that. We even
I think
talked about
it depends on the local temple church community and what they see as how they view children of the family. In Oakland, we have it. A child is still considered have all the rights and ability to access all the activities of the temple church until they're 21, I believe. And then we ask them to become part of the youth individual membership that BCA provides. Until 26, I believe that's the thing. 26, was it? Anyway.
So I think this is going back to this point that we do need to have more conversation about this too. Let me ask, as we finish out the presentation with 3 minutes, I'm going to call us back to the objectives of the presentation, which is, have we introduced this topic sufficiently enough for you to be interested in continuing this conversation moving forward in 2026? This is a huge step for us. I'm also going to ask you maybe to put in the chat, what did you take away from our conversation today? We are saving, obviously, everything in the chat for ourselves so we can come back and share this conversation with all of you too. And I know
this session is also being recorded.
That's right.
So we want you to be able to take what we've talked about today, and if other people in your temple and church want to hear this conversation again, it will be available for you to be able to allow others to be part of this conversation, because it's a really important conversation for all of us.
Right. So please, let me see if I can do this one last time before we go to, forgive me as we move back in the deck. Okay, here we go. All right. Share this last one. So I'm going to take us back to the objective slide. So hopefully you found this to be an entertaining, if that's the right word for it, or engaging possibility for discussion about what we think is one of the most important aspects of what the BCA and local temples are going to be dealing with over the next couple of years. This is the kickoff for the rest of the presentations that are having today. I hope you'll remember the mindset and the listening that Steve and I were talking about at the very beginning, which is hopefully you heard enough today to talk about what can I take back with me to my board. Some of it's immediately actionable. Some of it's just a discussion that we hope to have with you and to refine those thoughts. I'm sorry. And then the second question was, how can I prepare us for change and growth? And last, how do I increase the connections we have? So we're going to ask you to continue to keep those questions in mind as we move forward, take a break, go to our town hall after this, and then a slew of amazing presentations that are coming this afternoon from a variety of presenters. And I guess I would just end, and I'll give Steve a second here to end too. I just wanted to thank everybody. Your time is absolutely important. I know everybody's busy. These are the most pressing issues for Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in the United States, I believe. And so we welcome your thoughts, your conversation. Please don't hesitate to contribute during each of the following presentations that you see. And hopefully, this is the excitement and the engagement that we're looking forward to, or I'm looking forward to over the next 2 years with you. Steve, do you want to close us out?
I really want to thank all of you for being here this morning and for participating in this really important discussion that's happening across the BCA. It really is the crossroads. It really is rethinking and being innovative about how we think about the future for how we're going to be financially sustainable well into the future and take advantage of all those things that Dharma Forward was able to pull us and coalesce us around this future, what we can really truly believe is the BCA has a future here in the mainland USA, and we want to make sure that from an ongoing financial perspective of keeping our operations going, that we are being as creative and innovative to respond to the vision for everybody that we really do need to be in place for many generations going forward. I just wanted to Alex just put a comment in the chat that we're going to take a 15-minute break here. The next session to be chaired and facilitated by our bishop, Reverend Marvin Harada, is going to be a fascinating panel discussion from a number of individuals who have found Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And I really look forward to hearing that. After that 1 hour plus presentation or that conversation that will happen, we're going to take an hour-long break. For those up here on the West Coast, it's kind of lunch hour. For those on the East Coast, it'll be a mid-afternoon kind of break. And then we'll start the 12 sessions workshops at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Lots of great topics, important topics to bring to your local temple and church. I'm hoping that we broadcast it widely enough that your members in your local temples and churches will be in attendance, because so much of the information will be very valuable on many fronts. So please, if you have that opportunity to get other people to understand what's available this afternoon, please broadcast and let them know. I think that's
Steve,
it for.
We should also thank Alex too for helping us today.
Oh, yes.
So thank you for that, Alex.
Alex,
Absolutely.
thank you so very much. I know it's been a little stressful at the end here, but it all seems to come together. And I want to thank you and all the crew at Northwest District for being the host for today's workshops, but also putting together a wonderful National Council meeting that we will experience up in rainy, colder Seattle than what we're experiencing here in the Bay Area and in Southern California. So thank you all. Yeah.
So we'll see everybody at 11.
We'll see everybody. Do we want to do closing gusho?
Oh, that's right.
If we do so, I'm going to ask, where's our Ministers Association Chair, Reverend Henry Adams, to lead us in closing gusho.
Thank you. Yes, please join me in gusho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.